Will Galloway with Iain McMillan, Frogger, novelist, football
Yes.
fan. He just released his first book, The Boy with the Thorn in His Side. How are you, Iain or Frogger?
I'm either or, I don't mind, mate. I've been called Frogger since primary school days, so I'm familiar with both, so either or, whatever suits you.
So you're from the west, where about in Lanarkshire?
Well, I originally was brought up in a kind of village just near Hamilton called Stonehouse, which is near Larkhall. Larkhall's pretty infamous in Scotland, I suppose. So we went to secondary school Larkhall, so that was kind of my background and upbringing for that area, but I moved into Hamilton 20 odd years ago, you know.
So you kind of like what year were you born? Because that gives you an indication, or me an indication of what time you came.
73 I was born. I was born in 73, so I was 50 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. So when you were coming through at school, what was your first musical kind of like appreciation?
For me, I'm talking about primary school here, right? Like the latter end of primary school, when stuff like that becomes kind of important to you. My biggest influence would be the band Madness, for sure. I was kind of obsessed with Madness for a young age. And for Madness, obviously getting into the kind of other two-tone bands, the Specials and Bad Manners and the Selector and the Beat and all that kind of stuff. So that was the first sort of scene I was ever into, as much as I knew about it as an 11-year-old or whatever it was. So that was my first introduction in music and fashion and the importance of that kind of stuff, which kind of started it for me. I remember, like, when I was that age, taking pictures of Suggs into barbers and asking the guy to cut my hair like Suggs and all that kind of stuff, and wearing Fred Perry's and DMs and all that kind of thing. And I loved that whole thing when I was really young.
Where were you getting your clothes from then?
I don't know, probably at that age, D's of Trongate would probably where we would get Fred Perry's and stuff like that from, but probably market stalls and stuff like that back then, if I'm honest. You know what I mean? We'd probably go to Ingliston Market, Ingliston Market, and get Levi's or Harrington's or that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? So I don't remember there being a massive hunt for clothes at the time. You probably had an item and you were quite content for a while. That kind of changed his life and on a wee bit, but you're probably quite happy with a couple of Fred Perry's or Harrington, pair of DMs or monkey boots probably would have been back then. And that was the kind of look, probably looked like a wee rude boy type thing. But you probably knew very little about the kind of background of the scene or the roots of it or anything like that. You just liked the music. The music was fun to bounce about in, and you thought songs looked pretty cool. So that was the kind of start of it.
But they're kind of like the whole two-tone thing kind of like lasted over a few years before that dissipated and broke up. You know, so what followed after that?
Well, I was kind of thinking this. I don't know if because I came from a village, fashion moved a bit slower, right?
Yeah.
That's probably a factor. There's probably guys hung on to certain scenes for longer than it did elsewhere. But then they probably move on as quick. So when I was really young, but when I was a kid, the guys were a bit older than me. There was quite a few punks in the area. Like my mates' older brothers would be punks, and one or two mods. But after that, it was the Jam for me, right? And that probably doesn't fit in very well in the timeline. But just in where I discovered it, I probably just discovered the Jam starting secondary school. So when I started secondary school, it was probably somebody gave me Snap at the time. You knew all the big hits of the Jam, and then you started seeing the other Jam stuff. But for me, I never really became a mod though, because my generation, when I hit first year at secondary school, look, if you remember our time growing up, starting secondary school was dead tribal. I remember it turning up at secondary school and everybody was a something. Everybody was a mod or a punk, or there'd have been a couple of guys into the Smiths, there'd have been a couple of goths. Everybody seemed to identify with a certain tribe or another, anybody who was anybody. And mods were a really big thing at our school. Do you know what I mean? There was loads of mods at our school. So this was kind of deemed to be the cool thing for the cool kids. Whereas the guys that were into kind of heavy metal seemed to be a bit scruffy, I feel like. Right? That was the other side of the coin, really, with the heavy metal kind of guys. So the mod thing was, Paul Weller was deemed to be the the coolest thing since sliced bread, really. Do you know what I mean? Everybody loved Paul Weller at a dead early age.
Yeah.
And it kind of showed the importance of dressing well and where the music came from, how that connected. But for me, the mod thing was probably kind of fading out and becoming old hat, just as I'm hitting secondary school. So
Yeah.
maybe about second year, the casual thing was coming in then. And
Yeah.
for me, it seemed like casual was the new mod. I always kind of seen a big connection between casuals and mods. Although some of the lifestyles are a bit different, right? I always seen the casuals as just being the mods of my generation. They're just young guys who wanted to dress well, wear the latest looks, the latest labels, and be modernists, if you like. Casuals are effectively modernists of their era. And I always seen that was it. So mod suddenly became an old fashioned thing. It became kind of, it was old hat. And I suppose with the thing with casuals, well, see the introduction to casual, because everybody was wearing pastel colours and bright trainers and white trainers, it was so much more colourful and vibrant than mod. Mod was dead black and white, green Parker, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So casuals seem to be modern and a bit more, I don't know, new wave, if you like. Do you know what I mean? It just seemed to be a bit more interesting and a bit more something to be sought out, whereas mod was in the past suddenly.
Yeah. Yeah, but it's kind of like, because so I think the term, because I was thinking about it the other day when I moved to Manchester in the middle of '83, and I saw City play for a season with my mates in Burnage, and nobody called themselves a casual. You know, it wasn't a term. You know, it's kind of like it didn't have a name. You know, the whole, because it got explained to me, you know, when I was there, that the whole Perry Boy thing came 1980 and then just disappeared. You know, and then everybody dressed in sports gear, and you know, kind of like in a what would become known as, say, casual, but nobody called themselves a casual. You
I
know,
think the casual thing was very much a Scottish term. I know a
yeah,
lot of guys down south that didn't call themselves casuals. They were
yeah,
football lads, or they might have been a dresser, or they had a different term for it. But
yeah,
the term casual, I think, is very synopsis with Scotland.
yeah,
It doesn't seem to be so popular down south. They'd be aware of the term,
yeah,
but it wasn't used as day to day. Up here, just a casual, that was it.
yeah,
That was the term. But I think the thing with casual as well was what you're unaware of when you're that young. There was a wee bit of an evolution that you were probably unaware of. Like you say, the Perry Boys existed before that.
yeah,
And obviously there was a thing going on in Liverpool where the sportswear was coming in a bit more. And obviously it's universally agreed that the Scousers were probably the catalyst for the whole thing to get kind of for everybody, really. But when I think it's on that Casual DVD where Paulo Hewitt talks about, when you look at the Jamaicans, they're wearing like the Yardie Cardies, Farah slacks, and that stuff. And there's bits been kind of stolen and evolved for there, and it's became something in the early 80s. It didn't just happen overnight. Do you know what I mean? There'll be Soul Boys, some of that wedge haircut and all that, and it's been kind of Magpie Picks that's came in, and it's evolved into this thing called casual.
yeah, yeah. I mean, I can see photographs from some of my mates from the mid '70s where they're wearing Lacoste and looking in the term casual, for want of a better word. So it was definitely happening in London as well at the same time. You know, it's kind of like just that finding, you know, the sportswear or brands that kind of like had a bit of, became a bit elusive to find. You know, not everybody was wearing them. You know, so I think London were doing it as well, but in a different way to people in Liverpool or people in Manchester.
But I think the kind of culture shock the whole time for me was how expensive it was in comparison to previous looks.
Yeah,
People kind of take that for granted now because you can kind of buy what you want with the cash you've got, you got a credit card or whatever it might be, you've got eBay, all that stuff. But back then, I remember if we were wearing, I don't know, Stay Press and Fred Perry's, and suddenly the next look you want to get is a feeler, or you want to get a Pringle jumper, it was triple the price, four times the price in the previous look. So you look at some items and think, God, how am I going to get that? That's a week's wages for my dad, some of that stuff, you know?
yeah,
So you had to kind of be committed to getting the money, because back then you were a school kid. So you had to
yeah,
get a milk round, or you had to get a paper job or whatever and try and get some savings on the go, try and get what you needed. Do you know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah. But it's kind of like, because my, I, You know, I have a checkered history with Scottish football. You know, kind of like when I moved up there, it never really caught me. So I never really followed anybody. But my knowledge is that kind of like Motherwell were quite early on in getting into casual wear.
Yeah,
You know, if you were to look at the letters in Times or the dresses book that they did, you know, that there was something happening in Motherwell that might not have been happening in other towns or cities in Scotland at that time. Because I specifically remember going to the first game of the season at Ibrox, and I kind of like there's no other casuals there, you know. And I remember some lad coming over and talking to me because I had a Lacoste polo shirt on, you know, and it was dressed quite similar. So, you know, there was obviously some other people at Rangers, but Rangers didn't have anybody at that particular time, you know. But you could see it growing, you know, as the time went on. You know, they attracted more and more people dressed in the similar fashion, you know.
there was Motherwell apparently the second in Scotland. Aberdeen were the first. Apparently, then we were next. But there was a lad from Motherwell who moved to Leeds for a period as a school kid, and he moved back up, and he picked up this look for down south.
Yeah.
Steph, his name was, right. So Steph came back. It's a well-known folktale in Motherwell. Everybody knows that Steph kind of brought the look back for Leeds, giving Motherwell the heads up really on this new fashion that was happening. So quite soon all his school chums kind of converted overnight to the bleached jeans and Puma G Villas and Patrick windbreakers and all that sort of stuff. So the look kind of evolved. There's maybe 10, 15 young boys were at the time. And it kind of grew arms and legs quite quickly in Motherwell. So I don't know why it is in Motherwell it's became such a big thing. I mean, I don't just mean the size of the mob at the football or the reputation model or anything like that. That whole look throughout the whole town is just so massive compared to anywhere else. When I look at the comparison in Motherwell compared to other cities, I mean, Motherwell's only a town, remember, do you know what I mean? We're only a wee town in comparison to other city clubs. They've had such a big impact on the casual culture. Do you know what I mean? It's really kind of stuck with glue in Motherwell, the whole casual thing.
Yeah, yeah. But it's kind of like, so when did football become a thing for you?
See, I wasn't a football fan when I was a kid, really. Not any big whining, like football wasn't my thing. There was a guy at school. See, for me, I remember going back to school after the Christmas holidays one time, and there was all these kids getting on the school bus who were a year or two older than me, with Nike windbreakers, jumbo cords, maybe Puma G Villas or trim swab on their feet. It was like, what's this thing? They're all wearing the same jacket and all that, and they were the casuals apparently, right? I mean, I'm like 11 or 12 at the time, and I knew a few of them, got to know them, and pretty soon a lot of people started copying the look, like the Pringles jumper, the Leyland Scott jumper and cords and all that kind of stuff, kickers, that kind of was quite early on. So people were wearing that stuff. But one of the lads was going to Motherwell. His family was from Motherwell, he supported Motherwell. And there was a cup game coming up and he was taking a bus to Tynecastle. And I think he was just trying to get bums on seats and trying to fill his bus. And he asked me if I wanted to go to this match with him. So I just got roped in to go to this match. And I just really enjoyed going to the game that day. I just loved the whole buzz of being at the football. I'd only been to Scotland games before that. And the match was a draw. So there was a replay the following week at Fir Park. So I asked him, can I come with you guys to Fir Park next week for the replay? And I went to Fir Park the next week. And from there on in, I just tagged along with him for the next 6 or 7 years to every match. Because I was about 2 or 3 years older than, you know. So that's kind of how it started for me.
Yeah. Because I love football. I think I might have said on a message, I love football. Moved to Scotland 78. And I went to 3 football matches. Tynecastle twice, one to see Middlesbrough play my team, and in the pre-season match, and I went to Ibrox again before that. I just found the football not as good as the standard of football I'd been watching, and it just put me off of watching. And also being in Livingston at that point, when you're 11, it's not that easy to get on a. It wasn't easy to. There was no trains. So you couldn't just go into Edinburgh and, you know, watch Hibs or Hearts play, and you couldn't go across to Glasgow easy, you know, like you could later on. So I never picked a team. I never started following anybody when I was in Livingston, you know, and it put me off of going to watch football. I'd see a few games, but it wasn't the most important thing of my life. And I think if we'd have moved to Edinburgh straight away, or Livingston or sorry to Glasgow or Motherwell, and then I might have picked a team and kind of like got into it. But it seems to be a bit distant from actually following a team. And you know, I think you support your local team, and Livingston at that point didn't have a local team.
Yeah.
You know,
Motherwell would have been our local team, but I think looking back now, it kind of opened my world up. A lot of people might think that the whole casual thing, getting involved in it because of the football violence type thing, is a negative path to go down when you're a kid. But for me, it wasn't like that. It was like it made it aspirational because suddenly I want to wear upper class clothing labels, and I'm going into shops I shouldn't really be going into, and I'm mixing places I shouldn't be going. And because we came from a small village, I'm then making friends in a bigger town, Motherwell. I'm making all these new mates in Motherwell. We got accepted in with the nucleus of the guys in Motherwell. So it opened my world up a lot. And I mean, you're seeing the whole of Scotland through school because you're going to Glasgow, Edinburgh, Dundee, Aberdeen, Falkirk, etc. And you're getting to see a bit of the country as well, where other lads in my class at school might not have been doing that at the weekends. You know what I mean? They don't have stayed in their wee area. So the football made my world a lot bigger.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, you know, talking about your book, those are the central themes of the book, which is football, fashion, music, drink, and drugs.
Yeah.
And your experience and realization of maybe how you should be living your life and what's good and what's bad for you, you know.
Yeah.
So
see, when I wrote the book, I kind of just done it for a bit of fun for myself during lockdown.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's what everybody's idea of fun, but it was a pastime really.
Yeah.
I've always kind of battered away at the keyboard when I've been kind of stuck for something to do. I've wrote bits and bobs of poems, I've wrote tiny bits of stories and stuff like that, but I never actually stuck with it and wrote a whole story or anything.
Yeah.
So the lockdown gave me the luxury of writing a bit more. And I was working from home, so my laptop was always sitting here. I'd also have a bit of time, work was a bit quieter, and I would just add to it a bit. And I kind of got hooked on it. I got quite a good buzz on it, especially when I went back when I thought, God, that looks right. I didn't know where somebody was coming from, so it just flowed out of me. So it kind of went, and as I was writing it, I would get a kind of bit of theme in my mind where I would think, well, let's look back and see how my mindset was when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And that stuff we're talking about, what was I obsessive about when I was really young? Was I the same as everybody else? Did everybody else feel obsessive about madness, for example? We start with, did everybody else crave the clothes the way I did? And I could see I had a certain kind of mind pattern that others might not have. And then I looked at the cultural differences in Scotland in particular, and I don't think I realised a lot of this stuff till I started travelling a bit more. Like when you're young, you go to Spain, you go to Ibiza, or whatever it might be, and you're just going there to get pissed and get mad with it for a bit. But when I stopped drinking, I started going to other places. I noticed a big difference in culture. Like at least one of my favourite places to go to, and the difference in Italian drink culture and Scottish is like night and day, right? They just don't drink the same way people do in Scotland. So it was kind of like, what choices have you got when you're 13 or 12 and you're standing on a park in a graveyard drinking when all your friends are doing it? That's kind of a cultural experience, and you're kind of pushed into that age because you're not going to stand up in the face of that kind of peer pressure and say, no, I'm not doing it. I'm going to concentrate on a more positive path. You're going to go along with everybody else. It's dead important when you're young to have a connection with a group or a tribe, which is why people pick casual or mod or skinhead or whatever it might be, and there's a sense of belonging there. Again, you're kind of totally aware of that when you're a kid, do you know what I mean? But you only know with the gift of hindsight that you want to belong to some. And that's probably where you start off. Right, drinking becomes the norm, and then obviously drugs come into the equation when you're maybe a little bit older, and it goes on from there, really.
Yeah, I think it seems to be, you know, alcohol was at the age of 13, 14, just part of norm, something you aspired to. You know, it's kind of like we'd have a school disco on a Friday night and we'd all get drunk before, you know, and then I'd start, you know, having a drink on a Monday night, going to the pub and drinking around to some friends' houses, and you then get into that culture. And the alcohol culture in Scotland's quite strong. You know, drinking alcohol is quite strong. You know, and if like you said, in comparison to Italy, where alcohol is not the be all and end all, and they probably respect it a bit more than British people do, you know, Scottish people.
The last time we were in Italy, me and my mate were sitting outside eating, and there was two Italian guys with like workies with like high-vis vests on sitting next to us. Finished their work for a bit of lunch, and they're having their pasta, and then they're having a beer, and then you know they bring these wee liqueurs at the end, and they have their wee liqueur, and then they're like back to work. I think, God, if I was in Scotland, they two guys would probably be in the dancing with their fucking rigging boots on at 3 a.m. It would just be a different scenario.
Yeah, but
I just seem to look at alcohol the way we do coffee, sort of thing. They have a couple of drinks and socialise.
See, I've always been able to, if I start drinking, I want to have more than 3-4 drinks. So I'd rather, if I was just going out for midweek, just have some waters or some fruit juice, and not drinking any alcohol, because there's been numerous times where I'd have one, then I'll have another one, and then I have another one, and then you're 6-7 pints in, and then you got to go to work the next day, and it's never conducive to a work life trying to do work with a hangover, trying to hide your bosses.
I think when you're young, but when you buy into that kind of thing where you get drunk on a Friday and Saturday night, it's not really up for question. Yeah. The alternative, drinking Friday and Saturday night just seems boring in comparison thereafter. Yeah. And then if you can sneak a sneaky one in on a Thursday or Wednesday night or whatever, you try and do that as well. And you don't really realise you're developing a mindset where downtime and fun revolves about alcohol. So I think the initial stages of that, it is fun. Let's not be kidded, it is fun, it is good times when you're a young guy out drinking. Yeah. Even stuff that you're going up to that's probably not that positive, it's just a good laugh, and your young boys will be boys. Yeah. But I think the nature of it kind of starts taking for you. The older you're getting and the more you're doing it, you don't realise it's creeping up on you a bit more. For me, certainly.
Yeah, I always found alcohol was a social thing. I drank alcohol because I was with friends, and it relaxed me, and it relaxed all of us, I suppose. And it was chatty. But then I went to university when I was 24, and I played for the football team, and they had these football socials, and it was all about speed drinking. And I've never speed drank in my life, because like I said, it was all about social. It wasn't about drinking as fast as you could, and they were drinking just to get pissed. And I never, ever, from the age of 13, drank just to get pissed. It was more, like I said, for a social thing, because you were with your friends or whatever age they were,
I think that's the difference. So I think some of us are able to have a few drinks to enjoy alcohol as a social lubricant that it is. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And others, guys like me, when I start drinking, I can't stop it.
Yeah.
So there is a difference there on how it's affecting different people. And I can see dead clearly when I'm in company through sober eyes, the one or two guys are like me.
Yeah.
They're probably drinking faster at the bar now, they're getting drunker, and they just find it very difficult to go home when they start. And that starts causing a bit of problems in your life, and you probably get to your late 20s when responsibility becomes a wee bit more important, or your mental health's been a wee bit more affected by it when you're younger. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think there is a bit of difference between how alcohol affects an individual.
Yeah. So going back to the book, if you started it in lockdown, did you have a structure before you started, or was it a collection of short stories that built up into a book?
Well, I kind of winged it, if I'm honest, right? I kind of winged it because I didn't know. I didn't have a grand game plan that I was going to bring it out. I did it for myself, and it was only till the latter stages it kind of took shape and became something. But I kind of look back. What I would say is the character Frankie in the book, I made it fictional because writing it as me being an autobiography was, for one, it was too personal, and two, I don't think my life deems an autobiography, right? I don't think I'm that important. I don't think it's that exciting. However, there is some stuff happening in my life that's probably worth documenting, where I put down the stuff about childhood, and then I kind of documented some of the fashion aspects we spoke about. I put about the start of the whole football casual thing and the progress throughout the rave scene. But what I wanted to document that, my thinking behind that was, let's look at drink as a young man, how drinking progresses and moves into pop culture. When did it change for me? And then for me, when I was 16, when cannabis came on the scene, I took that like a duck to water, the same way I did with drinking. So with some guys would turn up at the weekend with a bit of hash for the last week, but it would mainly be smoked the next day. and I'm noticing there was a difference with me. Some people, do you know what I mean? I didn't have an off switch with a lot of that kind of thing. And then through the rave stuff, and then I wanted to put where the mental health was deteriorating, and obviously there's a big part of the book goes into recovery and about self-discovery thereafter. So it was just kind of evolving. I was writing it, and I was just looking at my own life path. Really, I would say probably about 80% of the book's just true. There's some bits I made up because it fitted the story better. It just came to mind as I was writing it. But like some of the stuff putting up, there's a bit in it where the mother will visit Easter Road. That's just a true story, really. I just put the fictional character. Many a guy at the football said to me, remember that day, Hibs guys I met last week, they said they were there as well. So that stuff's just true. I just documented bits, but I made it fiction. Most of it's just true, except I think the good thing about being a fictional character is it takes the personal element out of it when you're writing some of the gut churning stuff about childhood and all that. It made it easier. And also you can make the guy a bit more extreme than you. Do you know what I mean? It doesn't need to be you, but you can make it. You can play about it a bit easier. I just found it a bit easier to write to that perspective.
Did you do literature, English at school? Were you good at school?
In general, I was probably an average student. I was probably always looking out the window or too interested being the class clown and impressing people with jokes and stuff like that, for honest. But English is the one subject I would say I was interested in, and I did excel at English. That was probably the only one though, but I probably had a genuine interest in it. I'm a kind of character, if I've no got an interest in some, I find it quite boring, I don't take it in. But if I've got an interest in some, I'm kind of obsessive about it. Do you know what I mean? Like certain bands I've been in through music, certain stuff I've been into all my life, and I would know everything about it. So if I'm passionate about it, I'll know everything about it and I'm into it. So English was a bit like that. I really like literature. I didn't realise this at school. I really like literature. I started reading when I was quite young and I've never stopped reading. What I love about music is the lyrics. I love song lyrics. When I was younger, before the internet, I would always try and work out what the song lyrics were and what they meant with that. So obviously you're young, there's certain words in songs you've no idea what they mean. You get the dictionary and stuff like that and try and work it out. And I always liked that aspect to it. So that's always something I've been into. I've definitely always liked that.
So I've always had a thing for Scottish writers. I can't put it into equation, but I obviously I like Irving. Alan Warner's a genius. Duncan MacLean, when he was writing, always did good, interesting books. And Golden Legs, cheeky books were quite good. But so there's always been a full affair of Scottish writers doing interesting novels. So it's kind of like I suppose it's a strong tradition that you're continuing.
Well, the first book I ever read through choice when I left school was the Aberdeen guy J. Allen wrote a book called Bloody Casuals. I don't know if you remember. I was about 16 when that came out, and somebody gave me this book. And it was about that at the time I was 16, but reading a book through choice rather than because the teachers told you to read it. So when I got that book, I remember reading it in like 2 days, right? It's not a very big book. I remember reading it in about 2 days. And I was really interested in the casual thing at the time. And he'd done it in local dialect, and I just found it dead interesting. He spoke with the mother on it and all that kind of stuff. And that got me hooked on reading. But as you say, Irving Welsh came out probably the early 90s, I would imagine, when Tradespotting came out and Acid House and that kind of stuff. And when that was kind of made known to me, reading stuff like that was kind of groundbreaking for loads of people from my generation. Because he spoke local dialect, he told stories about places he knew. And Irving's also obviously got a great imagination, but he's also got the balls just to say what's in his head, really. Which a lot of people wouldn't. You're making yourself quite vulnerable. You're doing a lot of stuff like you're right, because you're putting some of your internal world into the public domain. So, and he's not afraid to do it. Some of the obscure stuff he does, and I think that gave a lot of people got them into one reading, but it gave a lot of people the courage to write as well. I think he's a big influence on everybody. You know what I mean?
I think so. It's not easy writing. And kind of like if people think that you can just start writing and then suddenly you've got a novel at the end of the day, it doesn't work like that. It takes a lot of dedication and determination and distancing in relationships. I need a bit of time to do some writing, because when I was at school, I remember I always had kind of like, you know, good literature reports. Went to high school in Livingston, and the teacher that we had, I remember the first class or the second class after passing in some handwork, he just rubbished it, you know. And I kind of like from that point onwards, I didn't do any work for 4 years because. And I realised it was a personal thing, whether it was against me or whether it was against my dad. It was, you know, for whatever reason. And I kind of like, you know, it disheartened me from writing for quite a bit, you know, because, you know, I think when you become teachers, or if you're a teacher, you're there to encourage kids and, you know, try and push them into the right direction, you know. So it wasn't, even though I did write, it wasn't until, you know, much later on when you know, I started taking it a bit seriously. I'm laughing because I started writing this book when I was 16, and I've got like 50 pages in it that my mum kept, right? And I read it a couple of years ago, and I just thought, thank fuck I didn't finish that, you know, because some of the things in there are a bit too extreme, and I'm like, right, okay, you know.
There was a few bits and bobs in the book where I read when I read through it the second time when I'd all finished. There was one chapter I just thought it's garbage and just skipped it. And there was a few bits I read back. I was quite surprised how good I thought it was. Do you know what I mean? And the opposite. So a few I'm just like, I don't know where I was going with that one. This garbage, just delete. And there was other ones. It seemed to flow through you. Do you know what I mean? I just seemed to be tiny, and it seemed to flow through me. It came from somewhere else at times. I've got to be honest, but getting the idea, when I got the idea in my head about what this is going to be about, this kind of thing, I could type it all right, but there was all sticking points where I couldn't think about where is this going, what's this chapter going, what am I trying to actually say here?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It was easy to put, I found it quite easy to put myself in the shoes of the character.
Yeah.
Very similar to me, obviously. And remember the feelings and thoughts and descriptions and that kind of stuff. That was fairly easy for me. But getting the idea to keep writing, and I'm working on another one at the moment. I think I've done 4 chapters. I've got a rough idea, but I'm hoping the ideas will come as I keep writing. It'll evolve itself a bit.
Yeah.
A mate of mine's done a bit more writing, and he told me the best thing we could do is to keep connecting with the manuscript. If you've not got an idea, don't leave the laptop shut and just wait the idea comes. Get the laptop open, keep typing, and you might go back to it and go, that's okay, or delete that. But keep connecting to it, and it'll kind of come a bit. And I'm taking on board that advice and just trying to have a bit of discipline to put a few hours in every week, you know.
Yeah. So he's kind of like, what would be the new one that you're writing about? What's the theme?
It's going to be in the 90s. It's going to be based more around the music scene, though.
Right.
I'm going to introduce other characters, a female character, which I've done now, and I'm going to be about growing up again. I like to keep the theme where it's about finding yourself. I find that stuff quite. It's a bit self-discovery for me, I suppose, because I quite like, see, because I'm in recovery, I've done a bit of self-examination. Yeah. I'm very interested in that kind of stuff. I'm very interested in looking back at life's path and seeing what you've went down and how you're shaped to what you're shaped, that whole nature of the nurture kind of thing, and looking at my parents and looking at the impact they had on me. And I like to weave that through the story. Yeah. Right? I say that's what I'm passionate about, but also weave in the themes where I grew up, like the fashions and the music and the culture that was there as well. Do you know what I mean? I think that's what I'm going to do in this one as well.
Going back to
but not make it a copy of the first.
What's that, sorry?
So not making it like a carbon copy of the first,
right,
but have similar themes.
Yeah. So going back to the first one, once you finished it, what did you do next?
Well, what I did was I done about half of it, and then I printed half it off, and I just stapled it together. I just read it in bed at night. So I read it in bed every night. So I just read it in bed at night as if it was just my current book I was reading. And when I got to the first half end, I thought, this is all right, it's worth finishing. So it kind of gave me a wee boost to finish it off. So when I got it finished off, I just sent it to maybe the top 12 publishers on Google, who I kind of vetoed each one of them, made sure they were genuine, etc. And done a wee blob and just sent it off to them all. So I got a response from most of them. But see, if you're a first-time writer, this is my experience, most of them's going to offer you a high great deal of some description would want you to pay towards the publishing or whatever it might be, or self-publishing's option.
Yeah.
And me being a bit wet behind the ears with it, I did a bit more research on it, but I didn't want to invest too much money in it because I thought I could sell 10 copies here. I just don't know how it's going to go. Do you know what I mean? There's no idea. If I knew how it was going to sell, I might have done it a bit different. So I might do it different next time. So I didn't pay a massive amount of money out, so I didn't take a massive gamble. I got my mate to hand out the photographs on the front just because his photographs are better, to be honest. They looked more fitting on book. So I just sent it off to the top 10, 12 publishers and waited on the response, really.
And which publisher went with it?
The guy's called Michael Higgins, I think it is.
Okay.
He's just an independent guy, quite a small company. A few of them said no, but I mean, some of them send you back an email within half an hour saying, I really like your book. We think it's fantastic. If you give us £2,500, we will do X, Y, Z. You think you've read it in half an hour, have you? So you kind of get to know it's a money-making scheme. Some of them are salesmen as well. Some of them will phone you 3 times in the next week and they'll offer you, look, I know I've said to you last week £2,000, but I really think the £4,000 deal would be better for you. I mean, do you know this could be a movie or that kind of stuff? You think, sure. Do you know what I mean? You need to be right. Don't jump in there. They're kind of relying on your desperation to have your book published. Because if you're a bit naive like I was, you take the first phone call and they want my book. How much go? We really want it, but because you're a first-time author, we need £2,000. And a lot of people go for that, and that might work for some people. Do you know what I mean? But you know, they spent about £700 or something to get it there, but it's sold on Amazon. So it's worked quite well. But I just kind of promoted it on social media. But I've had decent feedback on it. I don't just mean guys who relate to the fashion and the football stuff. There are guys who are talking about the alcoholism side of things, or the mental health aspects in it. And I think that's getting important in Scotland because the culture is guys don't generally talk that kind of stuff. Do you know what I mean? Guys generally just push it on down and just go to the pub and try and forget about it. So I think there's a generation out there who's going to put a lot of stuff in their head. They don't really get to talk about it with anybody. So it's dead valuable if they can read that and see, I'm not the only guy like that. There's loads out there like that. And since then, we've started a men's group because of it as well. So our conversations about the book just led to starting a men's group. We've had I think there was about a dozen days there last week for the second meet. A few guys in recovery, a few guys from various backgrounds. And we've all started talking about where I was growing up. Here's how I felt. This is how I feel now. Here are my struggles. This is the struggles I had with drink. Here's the struggles with drugs. And we can look at our life patterns and we'll have a bit of a deep, honest conversation. And some of the guys, I mean, I'm in recovery, and so there's a few other guys, so I'm kind of used to that kind of talk. But a few of the guys who are unfamiliar with it, they've been kind of blown away. We walk up foot. This is what I need in my life. Do you know what I mean? I think men in Scotland in particular are dead guilty not express themselves in that event. I mean, MDMA and ecstasy coming about in the 90s probably helped a little bit, let's be honest, right? That probably helped a little bit as soon as expressed their feelings. But thereafter, as you say, you were attracted to kind of hard men characters when you were young. It's always seemed like the tough guys are the top of the food chain in Scotland. And that's always the case, do you know what I mean? So that's what we grew up with. I think the generation before us, of father's generation, would be even more guilty of that, do you know, being having an inability to express themselves. So I think what the book's done is people have read this and think, well, this is how I think, feel. And some of the best reviews I've had from mates have said, I tried to read it, but I was getting too paranoid when I was reading it, I had to put it aside. They were identifying with it too much, and I thought, good, that's at least stringing up some sort of emotion in you, do you know what I mean? So I think it's opened a few doors for people to get these conversations on the go.
Because you know, a lot of drugs is really not facing up to, you know, ecstasy or cocaine, whatever. Is not facing up to what the real problem is. It's escapism to push it to one side, deal with it another day. And obviously that day doesn't come because you then get into that cycle, which is what the book picks up on. You know, you kind of like, you have the weekend, a couple of days recovery, and then you're back on it again the next weekend. And the cycle just rolls on. And it's only when you get off the cycle when you realise, what have I been doing there? Which obviously is something that you did.
You realise how much time you wasted on it and how much it takes up your whole week rather than just your weekend. As you say, you're recovering on Monday, Tuesday, you don't feel great. Wednesday, you're getting together, and then it's kind of back on that cycle again. And your life revolves around about that. And the longer you're living like that, it gets to a point where you're kind of walking about feeling paranoid half the time. Your anxiety levels are through the roof. And the only time you get any respite for your own vapor, really, is when you're getting drunk. So you're getting drunk a few days, you're getting a bit of respite for the overthinking, the anxiety. And then when the alcohol's back out your system, that stuff comes back tenfold. And you need to kind of live with it for a few days until you manage to get a bit of respite for you. Take it again, and back to the point we made about starting off when you're 12 or 13.
Yeah.
I can look back now and I can see there's a lot of guys just could drink quite socially. They went on to maybe experiment with drugs, but then in their early 20s or whatever, they've got married and settled down, and life became very much the norm for them. Do you mean life became quite healthy? There's other guys like me, I can see where I was self-medicating in a lot of ways because I did suffer from stress or anxiety, or I had some underlying issues there I wasn't resolving because there was a bit of turmoil in my upbringing, stuff like that. So I can see how it goes way back. Any trauma you've not dealt with, we're all self-medicating. For some. And that goes deeper even into recovery, where you look at shopping, for example, you'll maybe shop on your emotions, exercise, whatever it might be. And if you're going to have a personality like that where you're chasing stuff, you're probably better focusing on something that's a bit more negative or less destructive, at least. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. So do you still go to the football?
Every week. I've had a season ticket for about 20 years again. I still go every week. I still love the whole thing. There's the bit about getting up on Saturday and picking what you're going to wear and what jacket you're going to put on. No, it's never really quite left me, if I'm honest. And I still love meeting up with the lads on a Saturday and go to the match. And like I said at the start, I'm still not a massive football fan, although I do love Motherwell, and obviously I like to see Motherwell winning, right? But to me, it's part of a community. I've said many times the 11 guys on the pitch in front is really just a focal point for all these guys to meet up at the weekend. And they were a bit older, we might meet someone, get a bite to eat before the match and go up to the game and for 90 minutes shout a bit, and there's a bit of a giggle there, and then we go home feeling quite contented, and it brings a bit of camaraderie into my life. And I don't know, it still gives me something that's a bit, allows me to indulge that male side of me a wee bit still. It's dead civilised these days, you know what I mean? A lot of people get the wrong impression because you below the terraces when you're young, that you're now 50 and you're still continuing that because you dress a certain way or you go to football with a group of guys look that way. But majorities are quite grown up, quite civilised these days, to be honest with you, do you know what I mean? And if we go to away games, we might hook up with the lads that have been in mobs when we were younger, and the internet's connected a lot of different people now. So I've got friends for loads of different teams throughout Scotland, and we'll hook up with them when we've maybe got away games and stuff like that. So the majority of the time, it's quite civilised nowadays, do you know what I mean?
That could have been whether it was actually used or not, the acid house scene or the house scene in Scotland kind of like brought football firms together to a degree, put them into getting scenarios. You know, I remember being at the Civic Centre one all-nighter, 1990, and I was on the bus with loads of Hibs, and there was a load from Rangers, and there was obviously the Motherwell lot there. You know, and it got a bit tense afterwards in the car park, but nothing happened, and everybody went away. Everybody had a good night. You know, so that was like breaking down doors, if you know what I mean.
I definitely did. I think that's the kind of, attendance at football at that point in time went way downhill. I think just because people were hitting the acid house scene, and obviously the nature ecstasy and all that, it changed their mentality a wee bit. And there was a short period, but I think, and I tried to touch on this in the book a wee bit, I remember going to the football about 91 with like long hair, travel fox trainers on, flared jeans, smoking dope, and try to go fighting at the football, but you maybe go to dancing that night. The two worlds kind of badly mixed for a short period of time before you had to pick one, and most people moved on to go to acid house and enjoy the club scene. That's when people got to know, again, your world got bigger again because you're starting to meet people through all the country, and it was no safe to go to other places without getting any grief. It became a different thing for a wee while. Do you know what I mean? Although the fashion element still maintained that there within Lanarkshire for sure, still dressed a kind of football look the guys in Lanarkshire did. And if you went to higher 13 at a pavilion back then, everybody pretty much wore kind of football attire. that kind of stuff. So we maintained that kind of look with other guys moved on, but it definitely changed it for a good while, yeah.
Yeah. So where can you get the book from?
Amazon. It's only available on Amazon at the moment, anyway.
So is that one of those? Is that one of the deals where they print the books?
They print the book to order effectively.
Right. Yeah.
They don't have like a warehouse full of my books. Do you know what I mean? I can buy someone as an author at a cut price, but they print it by order, so anybody goes on and print it. And I've got a wee portal I can look in how many prints have went at that day and stuff like that. So you can tell them when it's sold. It's sold in 6 months. It's sold 650 copies, which I know it's nowhere near Harry Potter or anything like that. But for my first attempt, I'm fairly happy with it. Do you know what I mean? I'm hoping if I do a bit more promotional stuff in social media, podcasts or whatever, it sells a bit better than that. And it's not about making a great deal of money for me. I'm never going to make a lot of money out of this. It's just about me building up a wee bit more of a profile if I do a bit more writing or I do some more podcasts or whatever it might be. I just want the world to do a wee bit more for me, wherever it goes.
But it's kind of like the more you do something, the better you get at it. If you know what
Certainly,
I mean. You just, and I always, whether in bands or what, I'm just like, do as much music as you can. You know what I mean? Don't just concentrate, do the music. You know what I mean? And just get it out there in whichever format you want. And once it's out there, and just do something else. Because the more you do it, the more you get better, the more you pick up some kind of fan base.
Well, when I started writing the book, I did I don't know if you've heard of the magazine Scotland, the guys who about Pan and Arrow. I did quite a few articles for them as well, which helped boost my confidence with writing a wee bit, because that stuff was good. And I think I watched the feedback as well. When guys are saying, "Oh, I read your article, it was all right," it's kind of giving you a wee bit of sense that this stuff's been well received, it's all right. And I don't know if that comes from a kind of negative Scottish background or just my upbringing, but sometimes you need a wee bit of reassurance about it. And that kind of makes any self-doubt kind of be quashed a wee bit, and you get a bit more confident about writing this stuff. But just getting to the keyboard again and just type away and get a bit more out there. But I made some dreadful mistakes on the first one. Like there's some horrendous spelling mistakes in some bits, for example, right? But
you can get away with that, you know what I mean? If you look at Irving's writing, then it's so dialect.
Well, I quite liked the fact that there was to go back to your youth cult thing, there was a kind of punk rock attitude towards it in some respects. I was kind of winging it, but I kind of just wrote it myself, edited it myself, sent it in myself, and got my mate to take the photographs for the front cover. So there was a bit of pride in that as well, how we didn't get guidance for anybody. I didn't get anybody give me a nod in the right direction. I just had done it myself, and that was it. So the second attempt, I'll learn with the mistakes for that first one. I would hope it would be a bit better written. I can look at the mistakes I made in that, and I can structure it a bit better and stuff like that. Do you know what I mean?
I think you can become obsessed with typos, to the point where it stops your creation. And I'm a great believer. It's the same as doing music. If you've got a bum note in a recording, it's a bum note. You know what I mean? That's part of the charm, if you know what I mean. And that's part of you. That I've been with people who are just obsessed with getting the kick drum right, and it just goes on and on and on and on. And it's never ultimately right, because they go back and try and change it a day later. So you can become focused on not doing the creative side, and spelling mistakes are part of the creative side to a degree.
Well, I'm reading Rick Rubin's book right now.
Yeah.
He's just released a book about creativity, and he's kind of shown you how it inspires him to be creative and some of the pointers he's going on. It's quite fascinating stuff. And I like I said, when I started typing it, some it just seemed to flow out of me. I didn't know where it came from. You get a lot of musicians where they say, "I wrote that song in 15 minutes," and you think it sounds quite an egotistical thing when some of the Noel Gallagher says that. But you can understand that a wee bit now, where it just seems to come from somewhere else. You're not really sure where it's coming from. And there's certain bits I wrote, I genuinely don't know where it came from. I just kind of wrote by a look back for, well, that's all right. I just kind of kept typing, but as if it kind of came from somewhere deeper inside me than my thinking brain, I feel like. And Vic Rubin talks a lot about that kind of stuff in that book. And anybody who's doing anything creative, he's doing loads of podcasts about his book as well, and it's really interesting stuff. He's obviously got a lot of insight in it. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you know, when he came through, what he did was really revolutionary in the early '80s. You know, where talking about me, so I'd gone from punk in Livingston through to Edinburgh. My music was starting to change a bit, and then I hit Manchester, even though I still kind of like followed a few bands, punk bands. Everybody was into electro. You know, everybody was into hip hop. You know, soul music. So you kind of like your musical taste changes. But if you listen back to a lot of that early electro, early hip hop, it was raw as anything. You know, basic as anything, but it sounded really big. You know, which is what Rick did. You know, he made simple recording sound big. You know, he gave it a big sound. You know, and that's to his credit at that point that you know he was behind so many revolutionary kind of like records or hip hop records in the early mid '80s.
I like stuff. I mean, I'm a big fan of acoustic music and stuff like that. I like stuff that's kind of stripped back and raw and just.
Yeah.
I think if you kind of say it just a guitar and a voice, well, it's not a good song if I'm honest. You know what I mean? I think if you can do it with a guitar and a voice, it's still a good song. It's a good song. Do you know what I mean? To me, as I said though, when it comes down to music, it's about the lyrics for me. To me, it's like a story and song. Whereas other guys like the beats, they like the vibe, whatever it might be. And I can appreciate that as well, obviously, right? But to me, it's about the lyrics.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I've always got very much like my typos. I've always got the lyrics wrong whenever I start singing. You know what I mean? You know when you're singing away in a club and you're like you're just singing away, and then a week later you realise you're singing the wrong lyrics to the song. You know, and I think that's always been me. You know.
I was always kind of obsessed with that stuff when I was younger, but get the lyrics right. I
Yeah.
always had a good memory for song lyrics. Do you know what I mean? I would always seek out what it is he's actually saying. And God, like you say, some of the songs I sang all my life, I'd get like 20 years later, I'd realise it was one liner. I'd always sang the right line. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you very much, Iain McMillan, author
No
of
worries.
The Boy with a Thorn in His Side. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Will. Appreciate it, mate. Thanks again. Cheers.